Widowed billionaire father swore he'd never love again, until he saw a homeless woman save his daughter's life. What happens next is unbelievable. The sound of the office door slamming echoed through the mansion. Logan Pierce had come home from work early, a rare occurrence in the last 3 years. The two-story house in a Boston suburb, with its 12 rooms and impeccable garden, seemed too large for just 2 people, especially when one of them barely spent any time there. Logan loosened his navy blue tie and walked down the silent hallway. His footsteps were the only sound besides the constant ticking of the wall clock, a wedding gift that Sarah had chosen. Thinking of her still hurt as much as it did on the first day. "Mr. Pierce, I wasn't expecting you so soon," said Martha, the housekeeper, appearing at the kitchen doorway with a surprised expression. "I finished a meeting early. How's Emily?" "She's in her room, drawing. She's asked for you 3 times today." Logan nodded, feeling that familiar pang of guilt. He climbed the stairs slowly, as if each step required immense effort. He stopped in front of the door decorated with colorful stars and knocked lightly. "Emily, can I come in?" The response came almost immediately, with the sound of little footsteps running toward the door. Emily opened it with a smile that lit up her 5-year-old face. Her brown hair fell in curls over her shoulders, just like Sarah's. "Daddy, you're home early," she exclaimed, hugging his legs. Logan bent down and picked her up, smelling the scent of kids' shampoo. For a moment, he allowed himself to smile. "So what were you doing, princess?" "Drawing our family," she answered, pulling him by the hand to the small table in the center of the room. The drawing showed 3 stick figures, a large one with short hair, a small one in a pink dress, and a third figure with long hair and a big smile. Surrounded by clouds and sunbeams. "That's you, me, and Mommy in heaven," Emily explained matter-of-factly. "Martha said Mommy can see us from up there." Logan felt his throat tighten. He swallowed hard and forced a smile. "It's beautiful, Emily. Do you think she likes it?" "I'm sure she does." Emily went back to her drawing, and Logan sat on the edge of the bed, watching her. 3 years. 3 years since Sarah had gone out to buy milk on a rainy night and never came back. A drunk driver, a sharp curve, and everything was over. "Mr. Pierce, dinner will be served in 20 minutes, Martha announced from the doorway. "Thank you, Martha. We'll be down soon, Emily." The little girl nodded without taking her eyes off the drawing. Logan left the room and walked to the end of the hall, where the master bedroom was. It was still the room, never his room, as if he still expected Sarah to come back and occupy the other side of the king-size bed. He went into the walk-in closet and crouched in the farthest corner. He slid his hand under a pile of winter clothes and pulled out a dark wooden box. He sat on the floor and opened it carefully. Inside were photos of Sarah. Sarah at the beach, wearing the straw hat she loved so much. Sarah pregnant, with her hands on her belly. Sarah holding a newborn Emily. And in the center of the box, a white gold wedding band with 3 small diamonds. Logan picked up the ring between his fingers. On the day of the funeral, he had tried to throw the ring into the Charles River. He stood on the bridge for almost an hour, but he couldn't do it. Since then, he kept it in the box, along with the memories he didn't have the courage to face daily. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Thomas Bennett, his partner at Pierce Investments. "So Logan, the Japanese accepted the offer. We need to finalize the terms today." "I can't come back now, Thomas. I promised to have dinner with Emily." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Logan, there are $50 million at stake. Send the documents by email. I'll look at them after she's asleep." Thomas sighed. "All right." "Oh, and Rebecca called twice today. Said you haven't returned her messages." Logan closed his eyes. Rebecca was the company's CFO, beautiful and intelligent. They had gone out to dinner 3 times, always under the pretext of discussing business. "Tell her I'm busy with family." "Logan, it's been 3 years. Sarah would have wanted you to move on. Don't mention her name." Logan cut in more sharply than he intended. "I'll look at the documents later." He hung up the phone and put the box back in its place. He went downstairs and found Emily already sitting at the table, her legs dangling without reaching the floor. The dining table could seat 12 just, but only 2 places were set at opposite ends. "Martha, please put Emily's place next to mine." The housekeeper nodded, surprised, and changed the setting. Emily smiled, happy with the change. "What did you do at school today?" Logan asked, trying to sound casual as he cut the chicken on his daughter's plate. "The teacher taught us about families. I asked to draw you, me and Mommy, but she said to draw who lives in our house." Logan stopped his fork mid-air. "And what did you draw?" "You, me, and Martha," Emily answered, shrugging. "But then I made another one with Mommy so she wouldn't be sad." Logan nodded, unable to reply. Her innocence completely disarmed him. After dinner, he took Emily to brush her teeth and tucked her into bed. She asked for the usual story, how Logan and Sarah met in college when he spilled coffee on her book in the library. "And was Mommy mad?" Emily asked, even though she already knew the answer. "No, she laughed and said the book was boring anyway," Logan replied, smiling at the memory. "And then she invited me to get a real coffee. And you fell in love." "Yes, that very same day. Like in fairy tales. Better than fairy tales. It was real." Emily smiled and hugged the stuffed bunny Sarah had given her on their last birthday together. "Good night, Daddy." "Good night, Princess." Logan turned off the light, leaving only the star-shaped nightlight on. He closed the door carefully and walked to his office. The laptop was waiting, along with a half-empty bottle of whiskey. He poured himself a drink and opened his email. The documents for the Japanese deal were there, waiting for his review. Work was easier. At work, he didn't have to feel, didn't have to remember. As he read the terms of the contract, his cell phone vibrated again. It was a text from Rebecca. "I miss you. Can we see each other tomorrow?" Logan glanced at the photo in the frame next to his computer. Sarah was smiling with baby Emily in her arms. "I'm busy. Maybe next week," he replied, knowing he would say the same thing the following week. Logan Pierce, the billionaire everyone envied, the man who turned failing companies into empires, couldn't fix the one thing that truly mattered, his broken heart. To the world, he was a success. To himself, he was just the man who had locked his heart and thrown away the key. The Saturday sun lit up Boston with a golden late afternoon light. Logan adjusted his sunglasses as he drove his black Audi down the main avenue. In the back seat, Emily bounced with excitement, clutching her stuffed bunny to her chest. "Are you sure you want to go to the park?" Logan asked, looking in the rearview mirror. "We could go to the movies or that place with the arcade games you like." "I want the park," Emily insisted. "Martha said there are ducklings in the pond. Can we feed them?" Logan smiled. He had promised his daughter a full day together, no work, no phone calls, a promise he rarely managed to keep. "Of course, we can. We'll buy some bread on the way." The truth was, Logan couldn't remember the last time he had spent a whole Saturday with his daughter. There was always an urgent meeting, an international video conference, a contract to review. Thomas had been insisting he needed to find a better balance. "You've built an empire, but Emily is growing up without you even noticing," his partner had said the previous week, after Logan missed his daughter's spring recital at school. The Boston Public Garden was crowded, as expected on a sunny Saturday. Families were spread out on the green lawns, children ran around the pond, and couples strolled hand in hand. Logan felt that familiar pang in his chest, the pain of seeing complete families. "Let's find a spot near the pond," he suggested, holding Emily's small hand as she skipped beside him. They found an empty bench overlooking the pond. Emily opened the bag of bread, eager to feed the ducks. "Slowly, Princess. Let's throw small pieces so they come to us." Emily nodded, concentrating on the task as if it were the most important mission in the world. Logan watched her serious expression and wondered when he had stopped seeing the world with such intensity and curiosity. Maybe when Sarah left. His cell phone vibrated in his pants pocket. Logan checked the screen. It was Thomas. "Emily, stay right here on the bench, okay? I need to take this call really quick, just a minute." The little girl nodded, completely absorbed with the ducks approaching the shore. Logan walked a few feet away, turning his back to get better reception. "Thomas, today is not a good day. I'm with Emily." "Sorry, Logan, but the Chinese investors called. They want to move the meeting up to Monday. We need to discuss our strategy today." Logan sighed, feeling the familiar tension return to his shoulders. "Can't it wait until tomorrow? They're threatening to find another partner. It's a $20 million deal." Logan rubbed his temple. There were always millions at stake. All right, give me the details. While Thomas talked about exchange rates and contracts, Logan occasionally turned to check on Emily. She was still sitting, throwing bread to the ducks. This would only take a few minutes, he thought. What Logan didn't see was the small Yorkie that slipped its leash and ran towards the ducks. He also didn't see when Emily, charmed by the little animal, dropped the bread and got up to follow it. "Puppy, come here," she called, running after the Yorkie as it moved further away, toward the street that bordered the park. It was then that a young woman sitting under a nearby tree noticed the scene. Ivy Mason had just finished the only sandwich she could afford with the money she had left. Her simple, worn-out clothes contrasted with the appearance of the people in the park, but no one noticed her, an invisible woman among so many happy families. Ivy watched the little girl in the pink dress chasing the dog as it got dangerously close to the street. She instinctively looked around, searching for the child's parents. She saw a man with his back to her, on the phone, completely oblivious to what was happening. The dog darted into the street. Emily, determined, followed it. That's when Ivy saw it, a black SUV turning the corner at high speed, heading straight for where the little girl was about to step. Ivy didn't think. Her body reacted before her mind could even process the danger. She dropped her worn backpack and ran like she had never run before. "Watch out!" she yelled, but her voice was lost among the sounds of the park. She reached Emily just as the car honked and its tires screeched on the asphalt. In a swift motion, Ivy pushed the girl onto the sidewalk, feeling the rush of the car pass just inches from her own body. Thrown off balance by the push, Ivy fell hard onto the pavement. Her head hit the curb, and a sharp pain shot through her left shoulder. She felt the hot asphalt scrape her face before everything went dark. Logan heard the screams and the sound of a horn. He turned just in time to see a woman push Emily away from a car and then fall violently to the ground. "Emily!" he shouted, dropping his phone. He ran desperately toward his daughter, who was sitting on the sidewalk, frightened but seemingly unharmed. "Daddy!" Emily cried as Logan scooped her into his arms, frantically checking if she was hurt. "Are you okay?" "Are you hurt?" he asked, his heart pounding so hard he could barely breathe. "I'm okay." "But the lady—" Logan looked at the woman lying in the street. She had dark brown hair splayed across the asphalt and was wearing simple, worn-out clothes. A trickle of blood ran from her forehead. The driver of the SUV had stopped further down and was running back. "She came out of nowhere. I couldn't stop in time," he yelled, clearly in a panic. Logan handed Emily to an older woman who had come over to help and knelt beside the stranger. Her pulse was weak, but present. Her shoulder looked dislocated, and there were scrapes on the right side of her face. "Someone call an ambulance," he ordered, taking off his jacket and placing it under the woman's head. Within minutes, the sound of a siren cut through the air. The paramedics arrived and quickly placed Ivy on a stretcher. Logan took Emily back in his arms, still trembling from what had almost happened. "Daddy, is the lady going to be okay?" Emily asked, tears still shining in her eyes. "I hope so, Princess," he replied, watching the paramedics load the stranger into the ambulance. One of the paramedics approached him. "Sir, do you know her?" "No," Logan answered, "but she saved my daughter. Where are you taking her?" "Massachusetts General." "You can go there later to give a statement if you'd like." Logan nodded, a strange feeling growing inside him. This stranger had risked her own life to save Emily. He couldn't just go home as if nothing had happened. "We're going to the hospital, Emily. We need to thank the lady who helped you." The entire way to the hospital, Emily didn't stop asking about the lady from the park. Logan tried to stay calm, but his thoughts were a whirlwind. If that stranger hadn't been there, if he hadn't answered that call, if he had been paying more attention. At the hospital, Logan used his name and influence to get information about the newly arrived patient. Ivy Mason, 28 years old, no health insurance, no emergency contacts. "She's unconscious," the nurse informed him. "She has a dislocated shoulder, a mild concussion and some cuts, but she's going to be okay." "I'd like to cover all her medical expenses," Logan said, handing over his corporate credit card. "And I want to be informed when she wakes up. The nurse nodded, surprised, but didn't ask any questions. Emily insisted on staying. They sat in the waiting room, the little girl drawing with crayons and paper a kind nurse had brought for her. Logan texted Martha, explaining what had happened and that they would be late. 3 hours later, the same nurse approached them. "Mr. Pierce, the patient is awake. The doctor said you can see her for a few minutes." Logan looked at Emily, who was asleep, curled up in the chair. He carefully picked her up and followed the nurse down the white corridors. In room 307, Ivy Mason was trying to sit up in bed when they entered. Her left arm was immobilized against her body, and there was a bandage on the right side of her forehead. She looked even younger and more fragile under the fluorescent hospital lights. "Hello," Logan said, stopping at the door. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Ivy looked at him, confused, and then at the sleeping girl in his arms. Her eyes widened in recognition. "The girl from the park," she murmured, her voice hoarse. "Is she okay?" Logan felt a lump in his throat. The first concern of this woman, after waking up injured in a hospital, was for Emily's safety. "Yes, thanks to you," he replied, approaching the bed. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did." Ivy tried to shrug, but winced in pain. Anyone would have done the same. "No, they wouldn't have," Logan shook his head. "What you did was extraordinary." Emily stirred in her father's arms and opened her eyes. Seeing Ivy, she was immediately alert. "It's the lady who saved me," she exclaimed, reaching her arms out toward Ivy. Logan hesitated but carefully placed Emily on the edge of the bed. The little girl immediately took Ivy's good hand in hers. "Thank you for saving me from the big car," she said with the sincerity only a 5-year-old can have. Ivy smiled, and for the first time, Logan noticed how her eyes were a deep green, standing out against the paleness of her face. "Are you really okay?" Ivy asked, examining Emily with her gaze. "I am. But you got hurt. Does it hurt a lot?" "Just a little. It'll pass." Logan cleared his throat, feeling strangely uncomfortable. "Emily, let Miss Mason rest. She needs to recover." "Mason?" Emily asked, testing the name. "Ivy," the woman corrected with a small smile. "You can call me Ivy." Emily repeated the name several times, as if it were a magic word. "That's a pretty name." "It sounds like a princess." Ivy laughed, but the laugh turned into a wince of pain. "Should I call the nurse?" Logan asked, concerned. "No, I'm fine. It just hurts when I breathe, or move, or laugh." Emily didn't want to let go of Ivy's hand, and Logan noticed how comfortable his daughter felt with this stranger. Maybe it was a child's natural instinct, or maybe it was something more. He himself felt strangely connected to this woman who, in an impulsive act, had saved what was left of his family. "Miss Mason, Ivy," Logan began, unsure how to proceed. "I'd like to offer you a reward for what you did. Please, name a price." The smile vanished from Ivy's face. She gently pulled her hand from Emily's grasp. "I don't want money, Mr. Pierce, Logan Pierce." "Mr. Pierce, I didn't do it for money. I was just worried about her safety." Logan shifted, uncomfortable. He was used to solving everything with money, problems, favors, even gratitude. "But there must be something I can do to help you. The doctor said you'll be discharged tomorrow, but you'll need to rest. Where do you live? I can arrange for transportation." Ivy looked away, fixing her gaze on the window where the city lights were beginning to shine against the darkening sky. "Don't worry about me. I'm used to getting by on my own." It was then that Emily, who had been watching the conversation in silence, spoke with the innocent wisdom of children. "She can stay at our house, Daddy. We have lots of empty rooms." Logan's eyes widened, caught off guard by the suggestion. Ivy looked equally shocked. "So Emily, we can't just invite people to..." "But does Ivy have a place to stay?" Emily asked, concern evident in her childish voice. "Martha always says we should help people in need." Logan looked at Ivy, noticing for the first time how worn her clothes were, how tired she looked beyond her injuries. There was something in the way she avoided talking about her home that intrigued him. "Do you have a place to stay?" he asked directly. Ivy hesitated, clearly embarrassed. "I get by." "That's not an answer," Logan insisted. Ivy sighed, defeated. "I lost my apartment 2 months ago." I've been sleeping in shelters. When I can get a spot. A heavy silence fell over the room. Emily looked from Ivy to her father, not fully understanding what was happening but sensing the tension in the air. In that case, Logan said after a moment, I think Emily's suggestion makes sense. How you can stay in the guest room until you've recovered. I can't accept, Ivy protested, but her voice lacked conviction. You can and you will, Logan insisted. You saved my daughter. It's the least I can do. Emily clapped her hands, excited. We're going to be friends. I can show you my toys and my books and... Emily, Logan interrupted. Miss Mason will need to rest when she gets home. You'll have time to play later. Ivy looked at the father and daughter, a mix of emotions crossing her face, gratitude, relief, but also apprehension. It's just until I get better, she finally agreed. As soon as I can use my arm again, I'll find another place. Deal, Logan said, extending his hand to seal the agreement. Ivy shook it briefly, her touch surprisingly firm despite her apparent fragility. None of the three could have imagined, in that moment, how that handshake would change their lives forever. How a simple gesture of gratitude would turn into something much deeper. How fate, through an accident, was bringing three lonely hearts together in ways none of them could have predicted. The morning light filtered through the light curtains as Ivy opened her eyes. For a moment, she was confused by the high ceiling and the soft bed beneath her. She wasn't used to such comfort. The guest room in the Pierce mansion was larger than any apartment she had ever lived in. She tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in her shoulder reminded her why she was there. She took a deep breath and used her good arm to push herself up. The doctor had said it would take a few weeks to fully recover. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Miss Mason, it was Martha, the housekeeper. May I come in? Of course, Ivy replied, adjusting herself against the pillows. Martha entered carrying a tray with breakfast and a set of folded clothes. Mr. Pierce asked me to bring you some clothes. They belong to the late Mrs. Pierce, I hope you don't mind. Ivy looked at the clothes, a well-made cotton shirt and pants set, a far cry from her own worn garments. You didn't have to bother. My clothes are being washed, Martha completed, placing the tray on the nightstand. They were they needed a good cleaning. Ivy felt her face burn with shame. It had been weeks since she had washed her few clothes in public restrooms, letting them dry overnight in shelters. Thank you, she murmured, touching the soft fabric of the blouse. Little Emily has already asked 3 times if you were awake, Martha commented with a small smile. I haven't seen her this excited since... Well, in a long time, Ivy nodded, unsure what to say. The girl's enthusiasm made her nervous. She wasn't used to being important to anyone. Do you need help getting dressed? Martha offered. No, I can manage. The housekeeper nodded and walked to the door. Mr. Pierce left for the office but asked me to let you know he'll be back for lunch. Something about wanting to check on how you're settling in. As soon as Martha left, Ivy looked around the spacious room, feeling small and out of place. The pastel-colored walls, the dark wood furniture, the discreet paintings, everything screamed wealth and class, things that had never been part of her life. With some effort, she managed to get dressed. Sarah Pierce's clothes fit almost perfectly, which made her feel even stranger. She was wearing a dead woman's clothes, sleeping in a house where she didn't belong. When she finally left the room, she heard Emily's laughter coming from downstairs. She followed the sound to the living room, where the girl was playing with a set of colorful blocks. Ivy, Emily exclaimed upon seeing her running in her direction. She stopped a few feet away, remembering the injured arm. Does your arm still hurt? Just a little, Ivy replied, forcing a smile. Come see what I'm building. It's a castle for the princesses. Ivy let herself be led to the rug, where Emily had assembled an impressive structure for a 5-year-old. It's beautiful, she praised sincerely. Did you build it all by yourself? Yes, Daddy never has time to play with me. There was a note of sadness in the child's voice that broke Ivy's heart. But now I have you. The innocent declaration made Ivy freeze. This was dangerous. Emily was getting attached, and she was starting to feel something for the girl too. But it was temporary. Soon her shoulder would heal, and she would have to go back to the streets, to the crowded shelters, to uncertainty. Just for a little while, she reminded, more to herself than to Emily. Until my arm gets better. Emily ignored the comment, already focused on showing her doll collection. This is Ellie, this is Sophia, and this... She paused, holding a dark-haired doll with special care. This was Mommy's favorite. Her name is Rose. Ivy took the doll carefully, noticing the signs of wear. This doll clearly had a history. Did your mum like to play with you? She would tell stories to me and the dolls every night, Emily answered, her voice soft. Daddy tries, but he always looks sad when he talks about Mommy. The rest of the morning passed quickly. Emily showed her every corner of the house a 5-year-old considered important, her room full of toys, the garden with a swing set, the kitchen where Martha baked cookies on weekends. Ivy observed it all with a mix of fascination and discomfort. It was a glimpse into a life she'd never had and never would. A home, a family, security. Do you have kids? Emily asked suddenly, as they looked through the family photo album. No, Ivy replied, feeling a pang in her chest. Why not? The innocent question demanded a simple answer, but the truth was too complex for a child. I haven't found the right person yet, she replied, opting for the simplified version. Emily seemed satisfied with the answer and continued flipping through the album, pointing out people and telling fragmented stories, the way only children can. Around noon, they heard the sound of the front door opening. Emily jumped up. It's Daddy. He's back! Logan Pierce entered the living room, still wearing his impeccable suit, looking slightly uncomfortable to find Ivy sitting on the floor with his daughter. I see you two are getting to know each other, he commented, as Emily ran to hug him. I showed Ivy everything, the girl exclaimed. My toys, my dolls, the garden. I hope she let you get some rest, Logan said, looking at Ivy. She was a great tour guide, Ivy replied, trying to stand up without using her injured arm. Logan moved closer to help her, carefully taking her good arm. The touch, however brief, made Ivy instinctively pull away. Sorry, he murmured, noticing her reaction. I was just trying to help. I've got it, Ivy insisted, finally on her feet. Thank you. An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by Emily, who continued to chatter about everything they had done that morning. Martha said lunch will be ready in 15 minutes, Logan informed them. I thought we could eat in the garden since it's a nice day. If you're feeling up to it, of course. Yes, I am, thank you. Logan watched Ivy with curiosity. There was something about her that intrigued him, a quiet strength, despite her apparent fragility. He noticed how Sarah's clothes fit her well, and it stirred a strange feeling in his chest. Not discomfort, as he had expected, but something different he couldn't name. In the garden, sitting at a table under a pergola covered in vines, Logan noticed something he hadn't seen in years. Emily was genuinely happy. She laughed, gestured, told stories, things she rarely did in his presence. The girl seemed to blossom with Ivy's attention, who patiently answered every question, no matter how absurd. And have you ever seen a real unicorn? Emily asked between bites. Unfortunately, no, Ivy answered, smiling. But I have seen horses, which are almost as magical. Can Daddy buy us a horse? Logan choked on his water. Emily, we can't have a horse in the garden. Why not? It's big enough, Ivy laughed, and Logan realized it was the first time he had heard her truly laugh. The sound was light, musical, and it made something stir inside him. After lunch, Emily asked to show off her little plants in the garden bed. Logan stayed behind, watching from a distance, as his daughter excitedly explained each seedling she had planted with Martha's help. He noticed how Ivy knelt carefully, ignoring the pain in her shoulder to give the girl her full attention, how she smiled genuinely at every childish discovery, how her green eyes seemed more alive outdoors. And then he realized something that startled him. He was noticing too many details about a stranger. He was watching her in a way he hadn't watched anyone in a long time. From the kitchen window, Martha also watched the scene, a small smile on her lips. The girl seems like a different person, she commented, when Logan came in for more water. Yes, he agreed, surprised by the change. I haven't seen her this lively since. Since Mrs. Pierce was alive, Martha completed, children need that feminine energy, Mr. Pierce. Someone who truly listens to them. Logan felt the weight of guilt. He knew he wasn't being the father Emily deserved. Back in the garden, he found Ivy sitting alone on the bench. Emily had run inside with Martha to wash her dirt-stained hands. "She's a wonderful child," Ivy commented as Logan approached. "She is. I hope she's not tiring you out." "Not at all." "In fact," Ivy hesitated, looking at the garden flowers. "It's been good for me, too. It's been a long time since anyone needed me for anything." The vulnerability in that confession caught Logan by surprise. Behind the strong woman who had saved his daughter was someone who also needed saving. "Well, you're welcome to stay as long as you need," he said, surprised by his own sincerity. "Emily clearly adores you." Ivy smiled, but there was a shadow of sadness in her eyes. "She shouldn't. I'll be gone soon, and she'll be disappointed." "Why the rush?" The question escaped before he could stop it. Ivy shrugged, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. "Sad because that's how things work. Nothing lasts forever, especially the good things." Logan wanted to ask more, to understand what lay behind that pessimism, but Emily came running back, asking to show him her coloring books. Watching the two of them head back into the house, Logan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. As if a ray of sunlight had finally found a crack in the dark clouds that had hung over his life since Sarah's death, and that scared him deeply. The living room clock showed 2 in the morning when Ivy gave up on trying to sleep. Her shoulder throbbed, despite the painkillers, and her mind wouldn't stop racing. 3 days at the Pierce mansion, and she already felt like she was getting too involved. Emily followed her everywhere like a little shadow, and even Martha seemed to have accepted her presence. She got up carefully, adjusting the borrowed nightgown, another item from Sarah Pierce's wardrobe. She felt like an imposter, wearing the clothes of a woman she'd never met, sleeping in her house, living with her family. She opened the bedroom door and walked down the silent hallway. The house was different at night, emptier, lonelier. It reminded her that behind the wealth and comfort there was pain, an incomplete family. She went down the stairs carefully, trying not to make a sound. The kitchen was at the end of the hall, and a faint light was coming from it. Someone was awake. She hesitated, thinking of going back to her room, but the pain in her shoulder pushed her forward. She needed some tea, something warm to relax her tense muscles. To her surprise, she found Logan sitting at the kitchen island, a mug between his hands, his gaze lost in thought. He was wearing only pajama pants and a white t-shirt, a far cry from the always impeccable businessman she saw during the day. "Sorry," Ivy murmured, stopping at the door. "I didn't mean to intrude." Logan looked up, equally surprised. "You're not intruding. Come in." Ivy approached hesitantly. "I just came to get some tea. My shoulder is hurting a little." "I just made some," he replied, pointing to the still steaming kettle. "Help yourself." She took a mug from the cabinet and poured herself some chamomile tea. The soft aroma filled the air between them. "Can't sleep?" Logan asked after a moment of silence. "No." "You?" "Never," he answered with a half smile. "Sleep and I haven't been good friends since Sarah passed." Ivy nodded in understanding. She knew all too well the insomnia of those who carry loss. "Emily looks like her," she commented, blowing on her hot tea. "She has the same curls, and the same smile," Logan added, "and the same stubbornness." A comfortable silence fell over them. The kitchen, lit only by a soft light above the stove, felt like a world apart, a safe space in the middle of the night. "Are you settling in okay?" Logan finally asked. "Martha said you insisted on helping with the dinner dishes, even with your injured arm." Ivy shrugged, wincing slightly at the pain. "I don't like to sit still, or be a burden. Saving my daughter more than makes up for any supposed burden you might be." She lowered her gaze to her mug, uncomfortable with his gratitude. "Like I said before, anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have," Logan insisted, his tone serious. "Most people would have hesitated, thought twice." "So you didn't hesitate." "Maybe I just don't have much to lose," she replied, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Logan watched her for a long moment, as if truly seeing her for the first time, not the woman who saved his daughter, but the person behind that act. "What happened to you, Ivy?" he asked softly. "Thursa, how does someone so young end up with nothing to lose?" The question hung in the air between them. Ivy contemplated making up a story, something vague and impersonal. But there was something about that moment, in the quiet of the kitchen, in the vulnerability that sleeplessness brought, that made her want to be honest. "I was married," she began, her voice low. "For almost 4 years. David was charming, fun, always full of big plans." She paused, taking a sip of tea. Logan waited, not pressing. "I believed in every dream he sold me. We mortgaged the house I inherited from my parents to open a restaurant. I co-signed on loans. I left my job at the public library to work with him." Ivy took a deep breath, reliving those moments. "One day, I came home from the grocery store and found the house empty. He had taken everything of value, emptied our bank accounts. He just left a note saying the marriage had been a mistake, that he needed freedom." "My God," Logan murmured, shocked. "The worst came later. I found out he had forged my signature on several loans. The creditors started showing up, demanding payments I couldn't make. Within 6 months, I lost the house, the car, everything. You didn't go to the police, family." Ivy smiled without humor. "Of course I did. The police said it was a civil matter, not criminal. And family, well, I don't have any. My parents died in an accident when I was 20. I was an only child." Logan felt the weight of that loneliness. At least he had Emily. "I tried to start over," Ivy continued. "I got a job at a diner, rented a tiny room, but my credit was ruined. The debts kept piling up, and my salary barely covered the rent. Then I got sick. Sick. Pneumonia. I was out of work for 2 weeks. When I came back, my position had already been filled. Without a job, I couldn't pay the rent. Without references, I couldn't find another place. And so," she made a vague gesture with her hand, "the streets were the only option left." She looked down, unable to face Logan. The shame of her situation weighed more heavily than any physical pain. "How long?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Almost a year. I managed to stay in shelters most nights, did some temp work. I was trying to save money for a security deposit when I saw Emily running into the street." Logan was silent, absorbing it all. The woman before him, who had risked her own life to save his daughter, had lost everything, not by choice, not by mistake, but by trusting someone who didn't deserve it. "And even then," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion, "even with nothing, you didn't hesitate to risk the little you had to save a child you didn't even know." Ivy finally looked up, surprised by the emotion in his voice. "It wasn't a conscious choice. I saw the danger and I reacted. That's what makes the act even more extraordinary," Logan replied. "It reveals who you really are." She looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. "I'm no one special, just someone who's had a lot of bad luck." Logan shook his head in disagreement. "A person's character isn't defined by luck, good or bad. It's defined by their choices, especially when there's no time to think." Their hands briefly touched on the table. An accidental touch, but it made both of them pull back, surprised by the electricity of that simple contact. "Thank you for telling me your story," Logan said after a moment. "It must have been difficult." "Actually, it was liberating," Ivy admitted. "I don't talk about it with anyone. Your secret is safe with me." They sat in silence, drinking the now cooling tea. For some reason, that moment felt intimate, as if they were sharing something precious and fragile. "What did you do?" Logan asked. "Before all this, I was a librarian. I worked in the children's section, organized story time. That explains why Emily connected with you so quickly. You have a way with kids." "I always wanted to have children," Ivy confessed in a low voice. "It was a dream David and I shared, or at least I thought we did." The vulnerability in that confession touched Logan deeply. For the first time in years, he felt the urge to reach out and comfort someone, to offer more than just money or practical solutions. "You're still young," he said softly. "There's time to start over, to make that dream come true." Ivy gave a sad smile. Maybe. But first I need to find a roof over my head, a job, sort out my debts. It feels like an impossible mountain to climb. No mountain is impossible with the right help. She looked up, surprised by the implied offer. I don't want your charity, Mr. Pierce. Logan, he corrected. And it's not charity. It's gratitude. You saved the most precious thing in my world. Ivy nodded, not arguing. The exhaustion was beginning to weigh on her. I think I'll try to get some sleep now, she said, standing up. Thanks for the tea and for the conversation. It was my pleasure, Logan replied, watching her walk to the door. Ivy? She stopped, turning around. Yes? I'm glad you crossed our path. Emily is too. A genuine smile lit up her face for the first time. Me too. As she walked back to her room, Ivy felt a strange sensation in her chest, a nearly forgotten feeling of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the winds in her life were finally changing direction. Logan remained in the kitchen for a long time after she left, contemplating the empty mug and the night's revelations. Something had shifted inside him. A door he thought was permanently closed seemed to have opened, if only a crack, and that both scared and excited him in equal measure. 2 weeks had passed since Ivy had arrived at the Pierce mansion. The doctor had removed her sling, though he recommended she continue with light exercises to fully regain her shoulder's mobility. The scratches on her face had healed, leaving only a faint mark near her right temple. Saturday morning dawned sunny, with that soft spring warmth that invited you outdoors. Martha had gone to visit her sister, and Logan had to go to the office for an emergency video conference with investors from Asia. Just you two today, he had said at the breakfast table, sounding genuinely disappointed to be working on a Saturday. I promise I won't be long. Now, Ivy and Emily were in the backyard, kneeling on an old towel spread on the grass. Emily wore a straw hat that was too big for her head and kept falling over her eyes, making her laugh. Ivy was in jeans and a loose t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. First, we have to prepare the soil, Ivy explained, loosening the dirt with a small trowel. Flowers are like people. They need a comfortable home to grow strong. Emily mimicked her with her toy trowel, her tongue stuck between her teeth in absolute concentration. What do you mean, like people? The girl asked, curious. Well, they need food, which is the compost, Ivy explained, mixing the dark compost into the soil. They need water, just like we need to drink, and they need sunlight to grow healthy. And do they have families? Ivy smiled at the unexpected question. In a way, yes. Some flowers grow better when they're near others. We call it companion planting. Emily nodded, processing the information seriously. Like you, me, and Daddy? The question caught Ivy by surprise. She felt her heart clench, unsure how to answer. Yes, something like that, she finally replied, focusing on digging small holes for the petunia seedlings. They worked side by side in silence for a few minutes. Emily seemed lost in thought, which was unusual for such a talkative child. Ivy, she finally called out, her voice small and hesitant. Yes, sweetie. Did you know your mommy? Ivy stopped what she was doing, feeling the weight of the seemingly simple question. Yes, I did. She passed away when I was 20. Do you miss her? Every day, Ivy answered honestly. But over time, I learned to keep the good memories in my heart. Emily looked down, playing with the dirt between her fingers. I miss my mommy a lot, she confessed, her voice choked up. Sometimes I can't remember her face very well. Daddy has pictures, but it's not the same. Ivy felt a lump in her throat. She reached out and gently lifted the girl's chin. You know what my mom used to tell me? That when we miss someone a lot, it's because that person loved us very much, and that love is still inside of us. Emily looked at her with eyes shining with unshed tears. Really? Really? And I'm sure your mommy loved you more than anything in the world. The girl was silent for a moment, then asked, How do you know? Because it's impossible not to love you, Emily Pierce, Ivy replied with a soft smile. You're too special not to be loved. Emily threw herself into Ivy's arms without warning, hugging her tightly. Ivy felt the small hands clutching her shirt, as if afraid she might disappear at any moment. Are you going to leave one day? Emily asked against her shoulder. Like Mommy did. The question hit Ivy like a punch to the gut. She knew she should be honest, say yes, that eventually she would leave, that this was temporary, but she couldn't. Not with this child trembling in her arms, so starved for security. I'll be around for as long as I can, I promise, she replied, choosing her words carefully. And even when I'm not physically here, I'll always remember you. Emily pulled back a little, staring at Ivy seriously. Say promise, promise? I promise. The girl seemed satisfied with the answer and turned her attention back to the flowers, the sad moment already passing as it does with children. How about we plant these daisies now? Ivy suggested, trying to lighten the mood. They're my favorite flowers. Why? Because they're simple and strong at the same time. They survive storms, the cold, and yet they're still beautiful. Like you, Emily said with the direct simplicity of a child. Ivy laughed, touched by the innocent comparison. I think I'd rather be compared to a rose. No, Emily insisted with conviction. Roses have thorns that hurt. You don't hurt anyone. They worked for another hour, planting seedlings of daisies, petunias, and pansies. Emily insisted on making a special flower bed shaped like a heart for the family flowers, as she called them. This corner is for Daddy, she explained, placing a sturdy geranium seedling. This one is for me, she continued, choosing a purple pansy. And this one, she pointed to the center of the heart, is for you. She planted a white daisy there, patting the dirt around it with excessive care. There, now we're all together forever. Ivy felt her eyes sting with restrained tears. How could she explain to a 5-year-old that life didn't work that way, that people leave, that nothing lasts forever? Hey, it's beautiful, Emily, she said instead. Should we take a picture to show your dad when he gets home? Emily agreed enthusiastically, and Ivy took out the cell phone Logan had insisted she borrow for emergencies. They took several pictures of the heart-shaped flower bed, of Emily smiling with her crooked hat, of the two of them together with dirt-smudged faces. The sun was already high when they finished watering the new plants. Dirty and tired but happy, they decided to take a break for lunch. Can we make sandwiches? Emily asked as they washed their hands in the kitchen sink. Martha taught me how. Of course, show me what you've learned. Together they made turkey and cheese sandwiches with lettuce and tomato. Emily insisted on cutting hers into star shapes using a cookie cutter. Daddy always says food is food, no matter the shape, the girl commented as they ate on the garden bench, admiring their work. But I think pretty food tastes better. I agree with you, Ivy replied. We eat with our eyes first. What does that mean? It means that when something looks beautiful and appetizing, we start enjoying it even before we taste it. Emily thought for a moment, then smiled. Like when I first saw you in the hospital. I thought you would be my friend just by looking at you. Ivy choked on her sandwich, caught off guard by the unexpected comparison. Emily patted her back awkwardly, mimicking what adults did. Are you okay? I'm fine, Ivy replied, catching her breath. I was just surprised, and you seemed special to me right away, too. After lunch, Emily wanted to draw. They sat at the porch table with paper and colored pencils. The girl drew with concentration for almost half an hour, not showing what she was doing, covering the paper with her hand whenever Ivy glanced over. It's a surprise, she would explain mysteriously. When she finally finished, she presented the drawing with pride. On it, 3 stick figures held hands. A large one with a tie, a small one in a pink dress, and a medium-sized one with long hair. Above them, a smiling sun, and below, the words, "My family," written in uneven letters. It's us, Emily announced. You, me, and Daddy. Ivy felt as if the air had been sucked out of her lungs. She looked at the drawing, at that simple representation of something she could never have. It's beautiful, Emily, she managed to say, her voice strangled. Can I keep it? Yes, I made it for you to keep. Ivy folded the paper carefully and put it in her pocket, not trusting her voice to say more. They spent the rest of the afternoon building a fort with bed sheets in the living room. Emily insisted they needed a secret hideout to tell stories. Ivy told the stories she used to narrate at the library, modifying them to include a brave princess named Emily and her faithful unicorn. They were so engrossed they didn't hear the front door open. Logan stopped at the entrance to the living room, observing the scene before him. An elaborate sheet fort occupied the center of the immaculate room, and from inside came laughter. Ivy's voice was narrating the story of a princess saving an entire kingdom from a grumpy dragon, and Emily occasionally interrupted with enthusiastic questions or suggestions. Something strange happened inside Logan's chest. A warm feeling, as if a piece of ice he didn't even know he was carrying was melting. Emily's laughter, that pure, carefree sound that had become so rare, filled the house again. "Can I join the secret club?" he asked at approaching the fort. "Daddy!" Emily exclaimed, crawling out and running to hug him. "You're home early." "I promised, didn't I?" he replied, lifting her into his arms. "And I see you and Ivy had a lot of fun today." Ivy emerged from the fort, looking slightly embarrassed at being caught in such a childish game. Her hair was messy, and there was an ink smudge on her cheek. "I hope you don't mind the mess," she said, gesturing to the transformed room. "I promise I'll clean it all up before dinner." Logan smiled, and for the first time in a long time, the smile reached his eyes. Not at all. This house needed a little mess. Emily, still in her father's arms, began to recount the day's events. The garden, the flowers they planted, the star-shaped sandwiches. Logan listened with genuine attention, his eyes occasionally meeting Ivy's over his daughter's head. "Sounds like you two had a productive day," he commented, putting Emily down. "Ivy said flowers are like people, they need family to grow better." Logan raised an eyebrow, amused. "Is that so? How interesting." Ivy blushed slightly. "I was talking about companion planting. Some species help others grow when planted together." "Like us?" Emily added. "We're companions, right, Daddy?" Logan looked at his daughter and then at Ivy, a soft smile on his lips. "Yes, I think we are." Evening came, and after dinner, Emily asked them both to read her stories. Sitting on the edge of her bed, they took turns reading from The Little Prince, using different voices for each character. Emily fell asleep before the end, still holding Ivy's hand. "She's really grown attached to you," Logan commented as they closed the bedroom door. "That's what worries me," Ivy admitted. "I don't want her to get hurt when I leave." Logan looked at her for a long moment. "And when will that be?" The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken meanings. "I don't know," Ivy answered honestly. "My shoulder is almost healed but I have nowhere to go," she admitted, her voice low. "I haven't found a job yet, and the shelters are always full." "You know you can stay as long as you need to," Logan said. "Emily adores you, and He paused, as if rethinking his words. "The house feels more alive with you here." Ivy nodded, not trusting her voice to reply. She wished him a good night and retreated to her room, her heart beating strangely fast. In the days that followed, a new routine settled in. Logan started coming home from work earlier, often bringing small gifts, a gardening book for Ivy, seeds for exotic flowers, a professional set of colored pencils for Emily. On one particularly hectic afternoon at the office, he found himself glancing at the clock every few minutes, anxious to get home. To see Emily, of course, he told himself. But the image that came to his mind was of Ivy with dirt on her hands and that smile that seemed to light up her whole face. "You're different," Thomas commented during a meeting. "More present." "What do you mean?" "I can't explain it. You just seem more alive. It's the first time since, well, you know. That you don't look like you're just surviving." Logan didn't answer, but his partner's words stayed with him for the rest of the day. That night, after putting Emily to bed, he found Ivy in the kitchen. It had become a habit to share tea before bed. Their conversations flowed naturally, covering everything from favorite books to old dreams. "Emily gave me this today," Ivy said, showing him the drawing the girl had made. "My family," she wrote. Logan looked at the simple drawing, him, Emily, and Ivy, holding hands under a smiling sun. He felt something tighten in his chest. "She's happy," he commented. "I haven't seen her like this in a long time." "I'm afraid I'm in the wrong place," Ivy confessed, her fingers tracing the lines of the drawing. I don't want to confuse her. What do you mean? She lost her mother. She's craving that female figure. And then I show up and she... Ivy took a deep breath. I'm filling a space that doesn't belong to me. Logan covered her hand with his, the touch surprising them both. You're not filling anyone's place. You're creating your own space in our lives. Ivy felt tears welling up and gently pulled her hand away. That's what scares me. I'm getting attached to this, to you both. She looked up, vulnerable and honest. I'm afraid to believe it can last. Logan wanted to say it would last, that she could stay forever, that Emily needed her, that maybe he needed her too. But the words got stuck in his throat. There was still an invisible barrier, a silent loyalty to Sarah, a fear of moving on. Good night, Logan, Ivy said softly, getting up from the table. Good night, Ivy. She went up the stairs with a heavy heart. Emily's drawing still in her hands. A family. Something she had always dreamed of. Something that now seemed so close and yet so unattainable. The next day, she woke up determined to look for a job. She couldn't keep living in this borrowed dream. She needed to build her own life, no matter how hard it was to leave that house, to leave Emily, to leave Logan. But for now, just for now, she allowed herself to believe that this could be real, that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found her place in the world. 3:15 in the morning, Ivy watched the red numbers on the digital clock as panic grew in her chest like a wave. It had been a perfect day. Family dinner, board games with Emily, a quiet conversation with Logan on the porch after the girl went to bed. Too perfect. It was precisely this perfection that had woken her with a start in the middle of the night, her heart pounding as if it wanted to escape her chest. The dream was too good, and that terrified her. She sat up in bed, hugging her knees to her chest. A month, a whole month living in this house, in this family that wasn't hers. A month pretending she deserved this happiness. Who do you think you are? The voice in her head asked, the same one that haunted her on cold nights in the shelters. Do you really think this is going to last? The tears came without warning, silent and hot against her face. She had been through this before. The false sense of security, the illusion of belonging. With David, she had believed she'd found a home, a family, a future, and it all fell apart in a single day. Logan wasn't David, she knew that. He was a good, honest man, still grieving for his wife, and Emily, sweet Emily, who called her Ivy Flower, and held her hand as if it were the most precious thing in the world. It was exactly because she loved them that she had to leave, before she became indispensable. Before the inevitable departure caused more pain. Before Logan realized she wasn't enough, that she could never be like Sarah. She stood up with determination, wiping the tears with the back of her hands. Her shoulder was practically healed. There were no more excuses to stay. She opened the dresser drawer where she kept her few belongings. 2 sets of her own clothes, now clean and folded. The simple necklace that had been her mother's, a hairbrush, the doctor's card with the final recovery recommendations. She had left most of the clothes Logan had bought for her carefully folded on the bed. She looked at the room that had been hers for these past weeks. The big, comfortable bed, the curtains that filtered the morning light, the books on the nightstand that Logan had brought from his office when he discovered her love for historical novels. Small details that turn a space into a home. She took a piece of paper and a pen from the desk. The words were hard to find. How could she explain that she was running away for love, not out of ingratitude? How could she say that a quick pain now was better than devastation later? After several attempts, she simply wrote, I'm not the person you deserve, I'm afraid. She folded the paper carefully and addressed it to Logan. She grabbed the small backpack with her things and quietly opened the bedroom door. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint light from Emily's room. The girl still slept with a nightlight on, afraid of imaginary monsters. Ivy didn't plan on going in. It would be easier to just leave, to disappear into the night like a dream. But her feet automatically carried her to the half-open door, as if her heart refused to leave without one last look. Emily was sleeping, hugging her stuffed bunny, her curls spread across the pillow, her mouth slightly open. She looked so small, so vulnerable. The soft light from the star-shaped nightlight cast dancing shadows across the room decorated with flowers and unicorns. On the nightstand, framed in a colorful plastic frame, was the drawing Emily had made the day before, Ivy in the garden, surrounded by flowers, with a big smile on her face. "For Ivy Flower, from Emily," was written underneath in crooked, colorful letters. She felt her chest tighten. How could she just leave? How could she disappear from the life of this child who had already lost so much? "That's exactly why I have to go," she reminded herself, "before she gets even more attached, before I become indispensable." She approached the bed on silent feet. She bent down and adjusted the blanket around the girl, an automatic gesture of affection that had become routine in recent weeks. Emily stirred in her sleep, but didn't wake. "I love you, little flower," Ivy whispered. Her voice choked as she placed a gentle kiss on the girl's forehead. "But I can't stay." A tear fell onto the pillow, and Ivy quickly wiped it away. She couldn't leave traces of her pain. She had to be strong for all of them. She stood up and walked to the door, each step harder than the last. At the threshold, she turned for one last look. The image of Emily sleeping peacefully would be forever etched in her memory. A good dream she needed to wake up from before it turned into a nightmare. In the hallway, she stopped in front of Logan's door. Was he awake? Also haunted by nighttime thoughts? Or was he sleeping peacefully, unaware that she would disappoint him as everyone in her life had? She slid the note under the door, an insufficient goodbye for all she wanted to say. "Thank you for saving me. I'm sorry I'm not strong enough to stay. I'm sorry I'm not her." She went downstairs carefully, trying not to make a sound. Martha slept in the back room and was a light sleeper. The house was quiet, only the constant ticking of the wall clock marking the time that was slipping away. In the living room, her eyes fell on the sofa where they had watched movies together. Emily nestled between them like a small bird in a safe nest. On the coffee table was the board game they had played the night before, the pieces still arranged as they had left them. Details, small moments of happiness that now felt like needles piercing her heart. She reached the front door and hesitated, her hand on the doorknob. Outside was uncertainty, the cold, the loneliness. Inside, everything she had ever dreamed of. "Don't be selfish," she told herself. "You don't belong in this world. You never did." With a final sigh, she opened the door and stepped out into the cold dawn. The sky was clear, dotted with stars, indifferent to her pain. She walked through the front garden, passing the flower bed she had planted with Emily. The daisies were already starting to bloom, small white dots in the darkness. On the sidewalk, she stopped and looked back. The Pierce mansion stood imposing against the night sky, its windows dark like closed eyes. For a moment, she imagined going back, quietly climbing the stairs, sliding under the soft covers, pretending she had never thought of leaving. It would be so easy, so tempting, but it wouldn't be fair. Not to Emily, who needed someone reliable, someone who wasn't broken inside. Not to Logan, who deserved someone worthy of his generous heart. Not to herself, who couldn't bear to see the inevitable disappointment in their eyes when they discovered who she really was. Just a lost girl, pretending to be something she wasn't. Ivy adjusted the backpack on her shoulder and turned her back on the house, on the dream, on the almost home. One step after another, she forced herself to walk down the silent street as tears finally ran freely down her face. The dawn swallowed her up like an old friend, familiar in its coldness. Back to the shadows, back to... The sun was already high when Logan woke up. He reached for the clock, 7:30 in the morning. Something unusual caught his eye. A small folded piece of paper on the floor near the door. He got up, intrigued, and picked up the note. Ivy's delicate handwriting filled his vision. "I'm not the person you deserve. I'm afraid." For a moment, he stood paralyzed, not fully understanding. Then reality hit him like a blow. Ivy was gone. He ran to the guest room and opened the door without knocking. The bed was perfectly made, as if no one had slept there. On top of it, neatly folded, were the clothes he had bought for Ivy. The drawers were empty, the bathroom devoid of any trace of her belongings. "No," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. How had he not seen it? Now replaying the last few days, it all seemed obvious. The way she looked at the house, as if trying to memorize every detail. The sadness in her eyes when Emily talked about the future. A muffled cry interrupted his thoughts. It was coming from Emily's room. He found his daughter sitting on the bed, hugging the pillow Ivy used to use, tears streaming down her small face. "Daddy, Ivy's gone," Emily sobbed, looking up with a devastated gaze. "She promised she would stay." Logan felt his heart ache. He sat down and pulled his daughter into a hug. "Did you see her leave?" he asked softly. Emily shook her head. "I went to her room to show her my new drawing, but she wasn't there. None of her things were there." "She left a note," Logan said, showing her the crumpled paper. "What does it say? Is she coming back?" Logan hesitated, unsure how to explain. "Ivy thinks she doesn't deserve to be with us. She's afraid." "Afraid of what?" Emily asked, confused through her tears. Sometimes, when people have been hurt a lot, they get scared of being happy. They're afraid the happiness will end again. Emily fell silent, processing her father's words. "Like you, Daddy?" she finally asked. "Are you also afraid of being happy since Mommy went away?" The innocent question struck Logan like lightning. That was exactly what he had been doing since Sarah's death, protecting himself, afraid to open his heart again. "Yes, sweetie," he admitted, his voice choked with emotion. "Like me." Emily hugged her father tightly. "But you're still here." Ivy left. Those simple words awakened something in Logan. It was true, he had stayed, even while afraid. He had faced each day for Emily, but Ivy was all alone with her fears. "I'm going to find her," he decided, standing up. "I'm going to bring Ivy back." Emily's face lit up with hope. "Really?" "I'm going to try. I can't promise she'll come back, but I promise I'll do everything I can." As he dressed hurriedly, Logan tried to think where Ivy might have gone. She had no family, no friends that he knew of. She had probably gone back to the shelters where she used to stay. Martha, the housekeeper, confirmed his suspicions. "I found the front door unlocked very early this morning. She must have left during the night." "I have to find her. Can you stay with Emily?" "Of course." "Once, when I was washing her clothes, I found a card in her pocket. It was for the St. Clara shelter downtown. Maybe that's a start." Logan thanked her and grabbed his car keys. Before leaving, he stopped by Emily's room. "I'm going to find Ivy. Tell her she doesn't have to be afraid," Emily requested seriously. "Tell her we can be brave together." In the car, Logan tried to organize his thoughts. Why did Ivy's departure affect him so much? She was just a stranger who had saved his daughter, someone he had offered shelter to out of gratitude. But he knew he was lying to himself. Ivy had brought life back to his home, to his daughter, to himself. With her quiet presence and silent strength, she had become essential without him even realizing it. The St. Clara shelter was an old, well-maintained building with a small garden at the entrance. Logan went inside and approached the reception desk, where a middle-aged woman greeted him. "I'm looking for Ivy Mason. She used to stay here." The woman eyed him suspiciously. "And you are Logan Pierce. I'm a friend of hers." "I'm sorry. I can't provide information about our residents." Logan took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Please, it's important. She was living at my house, recovering from an accident. She left early this morning, leaving only a note. My 5-year-old daughter is devastated." The woman's expression softened. "Ivy isn't here," she said after a moment's hesitation. "She came by very early, picked up a few things, but didn't ask for a bed." "Do you have any idea where she might have gone?" "She used to spend a lot of time at Riverside Park. There's a bench near the pond where she liked to read." "Thank you," Logan said, already turning to leave. Riverside Park was 10 minutes away. It was a quiet place with a small pond in the center. Logan walked along the stone paths, his eyes scanning every bench, and then he saw her. Sitting by the edge of the pond, her small backpack beside her, her gaze lost on the water. She was wearing the simple clothes she had arrived in, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Even from a distance, he could tell she had been crying. For a moment, he just watched her. There was a fragility in her posture that contrasted with the strength she had shown when saving Emily. "Ivy." She looked up, startled. Surprise quickly gave way to embarrassment. "Logan, how did you find me?" "It wasn't hard. You don't have many places to go." Ivy looked down, ashamed by the truth in his words. "I'm sorry for leaving like that. I thought it would be easier." "Easier for whom?" Emily woke up crying, hugging your pillow. Ivy flinched as if she had been struck. "That just proves I did the right thing. She's already too attached. The longer I stayed, the worse it would be when I left." "And who said you had to leave?" She looked up, surprised. "Logan, we both know that wasn't real. I don't belong in that world." "Why not? What makes you less deserving of happiness?" Ivy let out a bitter laugh. "Look at me. I have nothing. I'm a disaster. You're a billionaire with a perfect life. What could I possibly offer?" Logan took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Do you know what I was before you showed up? An empty man living on autopilot. An absent father. Someone who had given up on feeling." He took her hands in his. "I've been hurt a lot in my life. I lost my wife and decided to never believe in love again. I thought it would be safer that way. You know, to close off my heart, focus only on work and responsibilities." Ivy watched him in silence, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "But having you around made me change my mind," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Seeing how you cared for Emily, how you brought life back to our home, how you genuinely cared, it moved me in a way I didn't think was possible again." A tear escaped and rolled down Ivy's cheek. "We don't know how to live without you anymore," Logan confessed, gently squeezing her hands. "I tried to convince myself it was just gratitude, that it didn't mean anything special. But I couldn't. I fell in love with you, Ivy." The words hung in the air, heavy with vulnerability. Ivy sobbed, tears now streaming freely. "No, Logan, you don't know what you're saying. You deserve someone better, someone like Sarah." "I don't want someone like Sarah," he interrupted. "Sarah was one of a kind, and what we had was special, but it's over. And you are unique in your own way. I don't want a replacement. I want something new, something that's ours." Ivy stared at him, the conflict evident in her green eyes. "I'm so scared," she confessed. "Scared of not being enough, scared of letting myself go and losing everything again, scared of disappointing you both." "I'm scared too," Logan admitted. "Scared of opening my heart and getting hurt again, scared I won't know how to be a good partner after so long alone. But I've learned that living in fear isn't really living." He gently touched her face, wiping away a tear. "We can be scared together, helping each other be brave." Something in Ivy's expression changed, as if an invisible wall was starting to crumble. "And Emily?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Emily adores you. She told me to tell you that you don't have to be afraid, that we can be brave together." Ivy closed her eyes, more tears escaping. "She really said that, word for word. She's a wise little girl." A sob mixed with a laugh escaped Ivy's lips. "She is, isn't she?" Logan held out his hand, a silent invitation. "Come back with us, Ivy. Not as a guest, not out of gratitude, but because we want you there, because you belong in our family." Ivy looked at his outstretched hand, her entire future contained in that simple gesture. Part of her still wanted to run, to protect herself, but another part, perhaps the bravest part, longed for that chance. "I miss you guys," she finally admitted. "Even though I've only been gone a few hours, it already feels like I've lost a part of myself." Slowly, she placed her hand in his. "I'm so afraid of messing everything up." "Me too, but I think it's worth a try." The ride back was silent, but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people absorbing a major change, contemplating possibilities that were once impossible. When they arrived, they barely had time to get out of the car. The front door flew open, and Emily ran across the lawn, still in her pajamas, her face lit up with a smile that seemed to hold all the joy in the world. "Ivy, you're back," she yelled, throwing herself into her arms with such force it nearly knocked her over. Ivy knelt, hugging the girl with intensity, fresh tears in her eyes. Emily held her face between her small hands. "You don't have to be afraid. I get scared sometimes too, but it's better when we're together. Ivy laughed through her tears, touched by the innocent wisdom. You're right, little flower. It's better when we're together. She looked up at Logan, who was watching them with a soft smile. There was still so much to sort out, so many uncertainties, but for the first time, Ivy wasn't running. She wasn't being carried along by circumstances. She was choosing to stay, choosing to believe she deserved this chance, choosing a family. And in that moment, in Emily's arms and under Logan's gaze, the fear that had always accompanied her seemed smaller, more distant. It hadn't disappeared. Maybe it never would, but now there was something stronger to counterbalance it. Hope. 2 months had passed since Ivy decided to stay. Spring was breathing its last, giving way to the approaching summer heat. The Pierce mansion was no longer the same. There were brighter colors in the curtains, books scattered on the coffee tables, toys that were no longer put away with military precision. Martha, the housekeeper, no longer complained about these small changes, recognizing them as signs of life returning to those cold walls. On that Saturday morning, the kitchen had become the center of attention. Ivy had promised Emily they would make cookies and cake together, a whole day dedicated to home baking. Logan had left early to handle some pending matters at the office, promising to be back for lunch. First, we need to separate all the ingredients, Ivy explained, as Emily watched attentively, a pink apron tied twice around her small waist. Like scientists do before their experiments? The girl asked, already familiar with the concept thanks to the stories Ivy read to her every night. Exactly. It's called mise en place. It's a French expression. Emily wrinkled her nose, making a funny face. Sounds complicated. It means to put in place. It's just a fancy way of saying organize everything before you start. The little girl laughed, delighted with the explanation. Together, they lined up flour, sugar, butter, eggs, chocolate, vanilla, and all the other necessary ingredients on the counter for the culinary marathon ahead. Now comes the fun part, Ivy said, handing Emily a measuring cup. Do you want to be my assistant chef? Yes, the girl exclaimed, bouncing with excitement. The first attempt to mix the dry ingredients resulted in a small cloud of flour that covered Emily's face, making her look like a little ghost. Instead of scolding her, Ivy burst out laughing. You look like a cookie before it's baked. Emily laughed so hard she lost her balance, grabbing the edge of the bowl and spilling more flour onto the counter and the floor. Oops, she exclaimed, her eyes wide and expecting a scolding that never came. It's okay, little flower. Cooking is like that. The more mess, the more fun. That permission to make mistakes, to have fun with her own errors, was something new for Emily. With Martha, always so organized and methodical, the kitchen was a place of rules. With Ivy, it was a laboratory for experimentation. While the cookie dough rested in the fridge, they started preparing the chocolate cake. Emily insisted it had to be a magic cake. What's a magic cake? Ivy asked, curious. It's a cake that makes people happy when they eat it, the girl explained with the simple, irrefutable logic of children. In that case, we need to add a secret ingredient. What is it? Ivy leaned in as if sharing a great state secret. Love. Lots of love. Emily giggled, finding the idea both silly and wonderful. She hugged Ivy around the waist, leaving flowery handprints on her shirt. Then it's going to be super magical, because I have lots of love. Ivy felt her heart clench at the innocent declaration. She kissed the top of the girl's head, grateful that Emily couldn't see the tears threatening to fall. When it was time to crack the eggs, Emily insisted on trying by herself. The first one splattered between her small fingers, running down the counter. The second was better aimed, but small pieces of shell fell into the bowl. No problem, Ivy assured her, using a larger piece of shell to fish out the smaller ones. This is how you learn. The morning progressed with laughter, small disasters, and achievements. The normally immaculate kitchen was transformed into a culinary battlefield. There was flour on the floor, butter on the drawers, and drops of vanilla marking the counter like tiny, fragrant footprints. When the first batch of cookies came out of the oven, the sweet aroma filled the entire house. Emily clapped her hands at the sight of the golden cookies with melted chocolate chips. We did it, she exclaimed proudly. Guys, we're real chefs. Yes, we are, Ivy agreed, feeling a simple happiness she hadn't experienced in a long time. And chefs always taste their creations. They sat at the kitchen table, each with a still warm cookie and a glass of cold milk. Emily bit into hers with her eyes closed, savoring it like a little food critic. "It's perfect," she finally declared. "How can I save one for Daddy?" "Of course, we'll leave the best ones for him to try when he gets here." While the cake was baking, perfuming the kitchen with its chocolatey scent, they tried to clean up the mess, or at least pretend to. The task soon turned into a bubble fight when Emily discovered that the wet sponge made funny bubbles. "Look, Ivy, I'm making snow." Ivy feigned astonishment as a handful of foam flew in her direction, landing on her nose. In retaliation, she drew foam mustaches on Emily's face, making her burst into laughter. It was into this scene of festive chaos that Logan arrived, earlier than expected. He stopped at the kitchen door, observing the scene before him. Flour on the floor, batter on the walls, utensils scattered across the counter. At the center of this culinary hurricane, Ivy and Emily were dancing an improvised waltz, both with faces marked by flour and chocolate, laughing as if the mess were the most precious thing in the world. Logan stood there, feeling something strange and familiar at the same time, a sense of completeness he hadn't experienced in years. He remembered when Sarah was still alive, how the house always seemed full, even when it was just the three of them. Emily was the first to notice him. "Daddy!" she yelled, running towards him with her hands still sticky with dough. "You're just in time." Before he could dodge, Logan was enveloped in a sticky hug that would certainly leave marks on his custom-made Italian suit. "Daddy, Ivy taught me everything today," Emily exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. "How to make perfect cookies and a magic cake. It was so much fun." "I can see that," he replied, looking around with a smile he couldn't contain. His gaze met Ivy's, who looked slightly embarrassed by the mess. "Sorry about the kitchen," she said, trying to wipe a chocolate smudge from her cheek, only managing to spread it further. "I promise we'll clean everything up." "Don't worry about it," Logan replied, surprising himself with the sincerity of his words. "It's good to see some life in this house." And it was true. The mansion, which for so long had been just a place to sleep and store painful memories, now pulsed with a different energy. The sound of Emily's laughter echoed through the rooms without restraint. There was a warmth that didn't come from the ovens, but from hearts that had finally found their place. Later, after a simple and delicious dinner, the magic cake served as dessert and, indeed, seemed to have the power to make everyone smile, the three of them went out to the backyard to enjoy the late afternoon. The sun was setting slowly, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The flower bed that Ivy and Emily had planted months ago now displayed an explosion of colors. Daisies, petunias, pansies, all blooming in harmony. "Look how they've grown," Emily exclaimed, running towards the flowers. "They're like a plant family." Logan and Ivy sat on the garden bench, watching the girl run among the flowers like a little fairy. Their fingers intertwined naturally, a gesture that had become familiar in recent weeks. "Thank you," Logan said softly. "For what?" Ivy asked, turning to him. "For bringing life back to this place. To Emily. To me." Ivy smiled, that sincere smile that still made Logan's heart skip a beat. "You've given me much more than I could ever repay." The sky darkened, bringing out the first stars. Emily returned to them, her cheeks flushed from running, her eyes beginning to show signs of sleep despite her protests. They went back inside, the girl already yawning, though she insisted she wasn't tired. "Just one more story," so she pleaded, as Ivy helped her into her unicorn pajamas. "Just one, then," Ivy agreed, sitting on the edge of the bed. Logan stood at the door, watching the scene. It was a ritual that had naturally established itself in recent weeks. Ivy would tell stories, Emily would fall asleep, and he would admire the family they were building, still in disbelief of his own luck. But tonight was different. When the story ended, Emily didn't fall asleep right away. Instead, she sat up in bed and, without warning, climbed into Ivy's lap, hugging her tightly. "I love you, Mommy," she said with the simplicity and certainty that only a child can have. Time seemed to freeze. Ivy sat motionless, her eyes wide with surprise. Then slowly tears began to stream down her face. She hugged Emily tightly, as if afraid the moment might slip away. She looked up at Logan, who was still at the door, equally moved by what he had just witnessed. "I always dreamed of having a daughter," Ivy whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "But I thought it would never be possible." Logan approached and sat beside them, enveloping them both in a hug. He held Ivy's hand, squeezing it gently. In that moment, he understood that everything they had been through, the pain of loss, the loneliness, the fear, the meetings and partings, had brought them exactly